My name is Trevor, 32 years old, and I never thought I would have to call the police on my own father. For years I worked hard to create a peaceful home with my wife Amanda, saving every penny for our sanctuary. Dad always thought he knew better than everyone, especially me. Family should support you, not sabotage your life. Nothing prepared me for coming home early that Tuesday to find a U-Haul in my driveway and strangers carrying furniture through my front door. Before I continue this unbelievable betrayal, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when family crosses the line. Growing up with Raymond as a father meant living under constant control. He made decisions for everyone in the household and expected immediate compliance. My mother passed away when I was 12, leaving my younger brother Kevin and me at the mercy of his domineering personality. Dad dictated everything from our haircuts to our college majors, convinced his way was the only right way. I met Amanda during my sophomore year at Washington State University. She was studying nursing while I pursued computer science. The connection between us was immediate and powerful. She had this calming presence that balanced my anxious tendencies that years of walking on eggshells around my father had ingrained in me. After graduation, we moved into a tiny apartment in Seattle. The place was barely 600 square feet, but it was ours. For 5 years, we lived frugally, putting aside every extra dollar toward our dream of homeownership. While our friends splurged on vacations and fancy restaurants, we packed lunches and tracked our spending to the penny. Amanda worked night shifts at Seattle Children's Hospital as a pediatric nurse, while I climbed the ranks at a mid-sized tech company developing financial software. Our sacrifices paid off 3 years ago when we finally purchased a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. Nothing extravagant, but the monthly mortgage payments were manageable, and the location cut our commutes significantly. The 3rd bedroom served as our shared home office, as we both occasionally worked from home. We transformed that house into our sanctuary, a place where we could decompress and just be ourselves. Meanwhile, my brother Kevin bounced from one crisis to another. 2 years, my junior Kevin inherited our father's stubborn personality but none of his work ethic. He cycled through jobs every few months, always blaming demanding bosses or unfair treatment for his terminations. He met Brianna at a bar 18 months ago, and within 3 months, they were living together in a rental that consumed most of their combined income. Brianna worked as a receptionist at a local gym but called in sick so frequently that her employment status seemed perpetually tenuous. She had expensive tastes that their budget couldn't accommodate, leading to a cycle of credit card debt and minimum payments. When she announced her pregnancy 7 months ago, Kevin expected everyone to shower them with support and financial assistance. Throughout our adult lives, Dad repeatedly pressured me to help family whenever Kevin created his latest mess. In college, it was covering his overdue rent. After graduation, it was lending him money for car repairs after he wrecked his vehicle driving recklessly. Last year, it was paying off a payday loan with predatory interest rates. Each time, the loans became gifts because Kevin never repaid a single dollar. Amanda and I established clear boundaries early in our marriage. Our home was our sanctuary, not a crash pad for relatives or a source of perpetual bailouts. We communicated these boundaries clearly and consistently to both our families. Her parents respected our wishes completely, occasionally visiting with advance notice and always bringing groceries or offering to take us out to dinner. Dad, however, viewed boundaries as personal affronts to his authority. 3 months ago, during a family dinner at a local steakhouse, the subject of Kevin and Brianna's upcoming baby arose. Dad immediately suggested they could stay with Trevor and Amanda for a while after the birth. I carefully explained that while we were happy for them, our home wasn't available for extended stays. Amanda works night shifts and needs to sleep during the day. Plus, we both need our office space for work. But we would be happy to help them find an affordable apartment and even contribute toward a security deposit. Dad's face flushed red as he stabbed at his steak. "Family takes care of family," he declared loudly enough for nearby diners to turn their heads. "Your mother would be disappointed to see how selfish you have become." Amanda gently placed her hand on mine under the table, our silent signal that we would not engage further. We changed the subject, but the tension lingered throughout dessert. As we left the restaurant, Dad clapped a hand on my shoulder and said ominously, You will come around. Family always does what needs to be done. On the drive home, Amanda expressed her concerns. I do not like the way your father dismissed our boundaries. It felt like he was planning something. I assured her that, despite his words, Dad would not actually intrude on our home. I had never been more wrong in my life. The call came on a rainy Sunday evening, as Amanda and I were preparing dinner. Kevin's name flashed on my phone screen, and I hesitated before answering. Our conversations lately had grown increasingly tense as his demands escalated with Brianna's advancing pregnancy. Trevor, we need help, Kevin said without preambling. The landlord gave us an eviction notice. We have 2 weeks to clear out. I stirred the pasta sauce simmering on the stove. What happened this time? Rent is 3 months behind. The new property management company will not work with us anymore. His voice carried the familiar blend of indignation and entitlement. Brianna is 7 months pregnant, man. We cannot be homeless. Have you looked into emergency assistance programs? I suggested. There are organizations that help prevent evictions, especially for expectant parents. Kevin scoffed. Those places want all kinds of documentation and have waiting lists. We need a solution now. I took a deep breath. I can help with a security deposit for a new place, but you need to find something within your budget. And you need to speak with a financial counselor to create a sustainable plan. We were thinking we could just stay with you guys temporarily, Kevin said casually, as though requesting to borrow a lawnmower. Just until we get back on our feet, 3 months tops. The familiar pressure built in my chest. Kevin, that will not work. Amanda needs quiet during the day to sleep between shifts. We have discussed this before. It is just for a little while, he pushed. Brianna is pregnant. You cannot expect her to live just anywhere. I remained firm. I am sorry about your situation, but staying with us is not an option. I will transfer $2,000 tomorrow to help with a new security deposit and first month's rent. There are decent one-bedroom apartments in Tacoma within your price range. Kevin hung up without saying goodbye. Within an hour, Dad was calling. I braced myself before answering. Your brother tells me you refused to help him in his time of need, Dad said, his disappointment evident in every syllable. I offered financial help for a new apartment, I clarified. That is substantial assistance. They need a place to stay, Trevor. Family does not turn away family. I explained again about our home size, Amanda's work schedule, and our need for the office space. I also mentioned the previous incidents that made us wary Brianna going through our bedroom drawers during their last visit, claiming she was looking for aspirin, the time they brought friends over without asking when they were supposed to be feeding our cat while we attended a conference. The noise complaints from neighbors when they house sat for a weekend. Dad dismissed each concern. Those are trivial matters compared to having a roof over the head of your pregnant sister-in-law. You have the space. You are just being selfish. The calls continued throughout the week. Dad, Kevin, even Brianna directly tearfully describing how stress was affecting the baby. Each call increased the pressure, playing on my sense of guilt and family obligation. Amanda reminded me nightly that we were making the right decision for our marriage and home. 2 weeks later, Dad stopped by unannounced on a Saturday morning. Amanda was sleeping after a particularly difficult shift in the pediatric intensive care unit. I met him on the porch to avoid disturbing her. Just thought I would check on my son, he said with forced cheerfulness. Can I come in for coffee? Against my better judgment, I let him in quietly, preparing coffee in the kitchen while he wandered through our living room, examining our photographs and bookshelves with unusual interest. The house looks great, he commented. That spare room upstairs still set up as an office. Something in his tone made me uneasy. Yes, we both use it regularly. Amanda is actually sleeping now, so we should keep our voices down. Dad nodded, but then asked if he could use the bathroom. He headed upstairs instead of using the main floor powder room. When he returned 10 minutes later, I could have sworn I heard the distinctive sound of a measuring tape retracting. After he left, I mentioned the strange visit to Amanda when she woke up. I think he was measuring the spare room, I said. She sat up immediately, alert despite her fatigue. Why would he do that? I do not know, but it felt off. The following Tuesday, Dad called to ask about my work schedule for the week. He never inquired about my work, normally claiming computers bored him. "Just wondering if you will be free for lunch." "Thursday," he said when I questioned his unusual interest. "I have meetings all day Thursday," I replied. "Maybe next week." Sure, he said quickly. "How about Friday then?" "Friday should work. I will check my calendar and confirm tomorrow." After we hung up, my cousin Madison texted me. She lived near Dad and often heard family gossip before anyone else. Watch out, her message read, "Uncle Raymond is planning something with Kevin and Brianna. Overheard him talking about moving stuff on Thursday when you would be at work." A cold sensation settled in my stomach as I showed the text to Amanda that evening. "You do not think they would actually try to move in without permission, do you?" I asked. Amanda's expression was grim. "After everything that has happened, I would not put it past them. But they do not have keys, right?" "No, but Dad did help us move in. He could have made copies." The possibility that had seemed paranoid moments before suddenly felt entirely plausible. We discussed options, including changing the locks preventatively, but decided to remain vigilant instead. I would check in with our neighbors and ask them to alert us to any unusual activity. Thursday arrived with a critical project meeting scheduled for 2 o'clock. But at 11:30, my team lead announced the client had a family emergency and needed to reschedule. With an unexpected free afternoon, I decided to head home early and catch up on some household tasks. As I turned onto our street just after noon, an unfamiliar sight caught my attention. A medium-sized U-Haul truck was parked near our house. Neighbors rarely moved in midweek, and I could not recall anyone mentioning plans to relocate. As I drew closer, my heart rate accelerated. The U-Haul was not near our house. It was in our driveway. I parked on the street, unable to access my own driveway due to the U-Haul blocking it. Walking briskly toward my house, I noticed the truck's rear door was open, revealing stacked furniture and boxes. A surge of disbelief washed over me as I recognized a pink floral mattress leaning against the interior wall. That was the mattress from Kevin and Brianna's apartment. I had helped them move it once before. My front door stood wide open, voices echoing from inside. I entered my own home with the caution of an intruder, following the sounds to their source. In my living room stood my father, pointing authoritatively as Kevin and 2 men I had never seen before navigated a wooden bed frame through the narrow hallway toward the stairs. Brianna sat comfortably on my couch, her pregnant belly prominent under a tight t-shirt. Around her feet were shopping bags, makeup cases, and a collection of framed photographs I recognized from her apartment. A half-eaten sandwich rested on our coffee table directly on the wood without a coaster, a ring of condensation already forming beneath the glass beside it. For several seconds, no one noticed my presence. I stood frozen in the entryway, trying to process the scene before me. It was Dad who spotted me first, his expression shifting momentarily to surprise before settling into casual authority. "Trevor, you are home early. We were going to have everything set up as a surprise," he said, as if announcing they had planned a birthday party rather than an unauthorized move. "What is happening here?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. Dad gestured toward the stairs where Kevin and his friends had disappeared with the bed frame. "Brianna is moving into the spare room. With the baby coming, they need proper support." We figured this was the simplest solution. My shock was quickly yielding to anger. "How did you get into my house?" Dad pulled a key from his pocket, dangling it with disturbing nonchalance. "Had this made after we moved you in. Never know when you might need access in an emergency." "This is not an emergency," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "This is breaking and entering." Kevin thumped down the stairs, wiping sweat from his forehead. He froze when he saw me. "Thought you had meetings all day," he said accusingly, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. "They were canceled." I turned back to Dad. "You all need to leave, now, and take everything you have brought with you." Brianna's eyes welled with tears, a performance I had witnessed numerous times when she did not get her way. "But we have nowhere else to go." I thought this was all arranged. "Your father said you had agreed but wanted it to be a surprise for Amanda." The calculated manipulation ignited something primal within me. I turned to Dad, who was already shaking his head dismissively. Son, do not be dramatic. We are family. Brianna needs a stable environment for the baby. Your mother would have wanted this. Do not bring Mom into this, I warned. She respected boundaries. This is my home, mine and Amanda's. We did not agree to this. You need to leave immediately. Kevin stepped forward, his posture confrontational. Where are we supposed to go? Back to an apartment we have been evicted from. That is not my problem, I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. You had options. I offered financial help. You chose to break into my house instead. Dad scoffed. We did not break in. We have a key. A key you made without permission. That is still unauthorized entry. One of Kevin's friends appeared at the top of the stairs. Should we keep bringing stuff in? He called down. No, I answered firmly. Nothing else comes in, and everything that is already here goes back out. Now. Dad stepped closer to me, lowering his voice. I already told the neighbors we were helping you set up for the new baby. Mrs. Peterson from next door even brought over a casserole for Brianna. The violation deepened. They had not only invaded my home but had created a narrative for the neighborhood, making it appear as though this was planned and welcomed. You lied to my neighbors. The betrayal cut deeper with each revelation. Brianna spoke up, her voice quavering with practiced vulnerability. I already unpacked some things in the upstairs room. I organized the closet to make space for the baby things. My office. They had rearranged my office without permission. I walked past them and took the stairs 2 at a time. The sight that greeted me upstairs stole my breath. My desk had been pushed against the wall, my computer equipment piled haphazardly in a corner. The bookshelf had been emptied, my professional references and Amanda's nursing journals stacked in disorderly piles on the floor. A crib stood half-assembled where my desk chair should have been. Kevin appeared in the doorway behind me. Brianna needs the natural light for the baby, he said, as if this explained and justified everything. I turned to face him, a deadly calm replacing my initial shock. Get out of my house. All of you, now. Or what Kevin challenged, stepping into my personal space. What are you going to do about it? Trevor called Daddy. He laughed at his own joke, apparently missing the irony that it was quite literally our father who had orchestrated this invasion. You have 15 minutes to start removing your things, I said, walking past him toward the stairs. After that, I am calling the police. Kevin grabbed my arm as I passed. You would not dare call the cops on your own family. I looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. 15 minutes, I repeated, and continued downstairs. Back in the living room, I found Dad inspecting the entertainment center while Brianna texted furiously on her phone. The two strangers stood awkwardly by the front door, clearly sensing the tension but uncertain how to proceed. I have given Kevin and Brianna 15 minutes to start removing their belongings, I announced. After that, I am calling the police to report unauthorized entry. Dad laughed dismissively. Stop being ridiculous, Trevor. No one is calling any police. This is not up for debate, I replied, pulling out my phone. 15 minutes. I walked to the kitchen for some privacy and to collect my thoughts. My hands were shaking, adrenaline coursing through my system. I had never directly confronted my father like this before. The familiar weight of guilt and obligation pressed against my chest, voices from my childhood echoing in my head. Family comes first. Do not make a scene. Your father knows best. I silenced those voices, focusing instead on what I knew to be true. This was my home, purchased with my money, maintained by my efforts. I had the right to decide who lived here. Amanda deserved to come home to the peaceful environment she needed after caring for sick children all night. We had been clear about our boundaries. This violation was deliberate and calculated. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Dad talking intensely to Kevin, who kept glancing my way with increasing agitation. Brianna remained on the couch, making no move to pack her scattered belongings. The strangers shifted uncomfortably, clearly wishing to be anywhere else. When 13 minutes had passed with no evident preparation to leave, I made my decision. I dialed 911. 911. What is your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional. I need to report unauthorized individuals in my home who are refusing to leave, I said, keeping my voice steady. Is this a breaking and entering situation? They had a key made without my permission and moved furniture into my house while I was at work. I have asked them to leave and they are refusing. Are you in danger? Are they threatening you? Not physically at this moment, but the situation is escalating. I need assistance having them removed. I provided my address and answered a few more questions before ending the call. When I returned to the living room, Dad's face was flushed with anger. You actually called the police on your family. His incredulity would have been comical under different circumstances. I told you what would happen, I replied simply. Officers will be here shortly. I suggest you start loading the U-Haul. Kevin stormed across the room. You self-righteous piece of trash. After everything Dad has done for you, this is how you repay him, by throwing your pregnant sister-in-law onto the street. I offered you financial help for a new apartment, I reminded him. You chose to break into my house instead. We did not break in, Dad shouted. We have a key. A key you made without permission, I countered. That does not make this authorized entry. While we argued, I discreetly used my phone to take photos of the scene, the U-Haul in the driveway, Brianna's belongings spread throughout my living room, the rearranged office upstairs. Documentation that might prove useful later. 15 tense minutes passed before 2 police officers arrived. Officer Rivera and Officer Thompson introduced themselves professionally and asked for a private word with me first. I explained the situation: concisely unauthorized key duplication entry, without permission during my absence, refusal to leave when confronted. They then spoke with my father, who attempted to frame it as a family disagreement. My son agreed to help his brother and pregnant sister-in-law. Now he is changing his mind. This is a family matter, not a police matter. I produced mortgage documents showing my sole ownership of the property and text messages documenting my explicit refusal to have Kevin and Brianna move in. The officers' demeanor shifted subtly as they realized the true nature of the situation. Sir Officer Rivera addressed my father. Do you have legal ownership of this property or permission from the owner to be here? I am his father, Dad replied, as if this answered the question. That is not what I asked, the officer said firmly. Without ownership or explicit permission, you need to leave when the homeowner requests it. Otherwise, this becomes a criminal trespass situation. Brianna began crying loudly, cradling her belly. I cannot believe you would do this to your own niece or nephew, she sobbed, looking at me. Where are we supposed to go? Officer Thompson spoke gently but firmly to her. Ma'am, we can provide information about emergency housing services that can help you find accommodation today. We do not need charity, Kevin snapped. We have family who should be helping us. Regardless of your family situation, Officer Rivera continued, you need to remove your belongings and leave the premises now, or you may face trespassing charges. Dad seemed genuinely shocked that his paternal authority held no sway here. This is absurd. I raised this boy. I changed his diapers. And now he is having us escorted out like criminals. Sir, please focus on gathering your belongings, Officer Thompson, replied, her patience visibly thinning. Under the officer's supervision, Kevin and his friends began reloading the U-Haul while Brianna reluctantly collected her things from the living room. Dad stood with arms crossed, refusing to participate, while continuing to mutter about family betrayal. The officers remained until the last of their belongings were removed, and the copy of my house key was surrendered. They documented the incident with an official report number which they provided to me before leaving. I recommend changing your locks immediately, Officer Rivera advised quietly as they prepared to depart, and consider a security system if you do not already have one. As soon as they left, I called a 24-hour locksmith, who arrived within the hour. By 3 o'clock, new locks were installed on all exterior doors. I spent the next 2 hours restoring my office to its original condition, erasing all evidence of the invasion before Amanda returned home from her shift. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from Dad, Kevin, extended family members I rarely spoke with, and even friends of the family. I silenced it, focusing instead on reclaiming my space. When Amanda arrived home at 7:30, exhausted from a 12-hour shift, I met her at the door. Something happened today, I said gently. Everyone is safe, but we need to talk. We sat at the kitchen table as I recounted the day's events. Amanda's expression shifted from shock to disbelief to cold anger. They were going to be fully moved in when I got home from work, she asked, her voice tight. Without even asking us. I nodded. Dad apparently told them we had agreed to it. He made a copy of our key without permission. That is beyond boundary violation, she said. That is a complete disregard for us as autonomous adults. We stayed up late discussing what this meant for our relationship with my family moving forward. The sense of violation lingered in every room, as if invisible fingerprints had been left on our personal space. I cannot keep doing this cycle with them, I admitted. This was the final straw. Amanda squeezed my hand supportively. What do you want to do? I took a deep breath. I think we need legal protection. A restraining order. She nodded slowly. I think you are right. This was calculated and deliberate. They waited until they knew I would be at work and you would be in meetings. That shows premeditation and a complete disregard for our clearly stated boundaries. That night, despite the new locks, we both slept poorly, waking at every creak and settling noise in the house. The sanctuary we had built felt temporarily tainted. I knew then that changing the locks was only the first step in reclaiming our peace. The morning after the incident, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. My browser history quickly filled with searches about restraining orders, legal protection from family members, and boundary enforcement. The information was overwhelming and often contradictory, so I decided professional guidance was necessary. I found Jennifer Morris, an attorney specializing in family law, through a colleague's recommendation. Her office scheduled a consultation for that afternoon, understanding the urgency of the situation. Jennifer's office was warm but professional, with landscape photographs adorning walls painted in calming blue tones. She listened intently as I described the events, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. What you are describing is definitely illegal entry, she confirmed when I finished. Making a key without permission and entering your home when you have explicitly denied permission constitutes unauthorized access even for family members. What are my options, I asked. Based on what you have described, including the history of boundary violations and this significant escalation, you have grounds for a temporary restraining order. This would legally prohibit them from coming to your home or workplace. She explained the process, filing paperwork with the county court, providing evidence of the necessity for protection, attending a hearing where both parties could present their case, and ultimately receiving a judge's decision. The temporary order can be granted immediately and remains in effect until the hearing for a permanent order, which typically occurs within 2 weeks, Jennifer explained. If granted, the permanent order usually lasts for 6 months to a year, depending on the judge's determination. I spent the next hour completing paperwork detailing not only the U-Haul incident, but previous boundary violations. Dad showing up unannounced. Despite requests for advance notice, Kevin borrowing money without repayment. Brianna going through our bedroom, and the pattern of emotional manipulation when they did not get their way. Jennifer reviewed my statement, suggesting revisions to focus on facts rather than emotions. Judges want to see clear evidence of violation, not family drama, she advised. 2 days later, the temporary restraining orders were granted against Dad, Kevin, and Brianna. A process server delivered the court summons, informing them of the hearing date scheduled for the following Tuesday. The backlash was immediate and fierce. My phone exploded with voicemails and texts from extended family members, most of whom had only heard Dad's version of events. Aunt Linda called me a heartless monster for putting legal documents between family. Uncle Robert questioned what kind of man would abandon his own blood. Cousins I had not spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my character and moral fiber. Through it all, Amanda remained my steadfast support, screening calls and helping me craft a single factual message that I sent to key family members. I understand you may have heard about recent events from Dad or Kevin. To clarify, they duplicated our house key without permission, entered our home while we were at work, and attempted to move Brianna in despite our explicit refusal when they asked previously. When asked to leave, they refused, necessitating police involvement. We have taken legal steps to protect our home from further unauthorized entry. We hope you can respect our need for boundaries. After sending this message, I blocked most numbers unable to withstand the continued barrage of guilt and accusations. To my surprise, a few relatives reached out with support. Uncle Stuart, Dad's younger brother, called with a different perspective. "Raymond has always been like this," he said quietly. "Even as kids, he thought rules applied to everyone but him. I want you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you are wrong. Some of us just do not want to deal with his tantrum if we speak up." The hearing arrived with stomach-churning anticipation. Amanda took the day off to accompany me, a gesture of solidarity that meant more than she could know. The courthouse was imposing, all marble and echoing hallways. Our footsteps sounded unnaturally loud as we followed signs to the appropriate courtroom. Dad, Kevin, and Brianna were already seated when we entered. Dad wore his Sunday best, a calculated choice to appear respectable. Kevin glared openly while Brianna, now nearly 8 months pregnant, kept her head down, one hand protectively over her belly. They had not hired an attorney, apparently confident in Dad's ability to persuade the judge with his paternal authority. Judge Michaels, a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and penetrating eyes, called the case with brisk efficiency. Jennifer presented our side, first submitting the police report, photographs of the unauthorized moving attempt, and documentation of the duplicate key. "My client has established clear boundaries regarding his home that were deliberately violated," Jennifer concluded. "This was not a misunderstanding, but a calculated attempt to circumvent his explicit refusal." Dad spoke next, his voice taking on the reasonable, authoritative tone he had perfected over decades of getting his way. "Your Honor, this is a family matter that has been unnecessarily escalated," he began. "My younger son and his pregnant partner lost their housing. My older son has a 3-bedroom house with space to help. As a father, I was simply facilitating a family solution during a crisis." "Did you make a copy of your son's house key without his knowledge?" Judge Michaels asked directly. Dad hesitated. "I had a key made in case of emergencies. As his father, I believe I have that right." "You do not," Judge Michaels stated flatly. "Home ownership confers exclusive rights of access to the owner regardless of family relationship." Kevin interrupted, unable to contain himself. "My brother has plenty of space. He is just being selfish, while my pregnant girlfriend faces homelessness." The judge frowned at the outburst. "Sir, you will speak when addressed." Brianna's testimony focused heavily on her pregnancy and their dire circumstances. "I have nowhere safe for my baby," she said tearfully. "All we asked for was temporary family support during this vulnerable time." "Did Mr. Reynolds offer you other forms of assistance?" the judge inquired. "He offered money," Brianna admitted reluctantly, "but we needed a home, not cash." "And did he explicitly deny you permission to move into his house?" "Yes, but his father said he would come around once it was done." Judge Michaels removed her glasses, pinching the bridge of her nose briefly, before addressing the courtroom. "Family relationships are complex and valued by this court," she began. "However, they do not supersede property rights or personal autonomy. The respondents in this case demonstrated a disturbing disregard for boundaries by duplicating a key without permission, entering the petitioner's home without consent, and attempting to establish residence against his explicitly stated wishes." She replaced her glasses, looking directly at my father. "Mr. Reynolds, being someone's parent, does not grant you unlimited authority over their adult life or property. Your actions were not only inappropriate but potentially criminal." The restraining orders were granted for 6 months, prohibiting Dad, Kevin, and Brianna from coming within 100 yards of our home or contacting us, except through legal counsel. As we left the courthouse, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and grief. The legal system had validated our boundaries, but at the cost of family relationships I had once valued despite their flaws. In the weeks that followed, our extended family fractured into factions. Some relatives cut contact, completely viewing my legal action as unforgivable. Others maintained polite but distant relationships, uncomfortable with taking sides, but unwilling to fully disconnect. A small minority privately expressed support, sharing their own stories of boundary violations they had tolerated from Dad over the years. Aunt Linda called one evening, her voice trembling with indignation. "Your cousin Emma's wedding is next month. How is she supposed to handle this with half the family under legal orders not to go near you? Emma can invite whoever she wishes, I replied calmly. If Dad, Kevin, and Brianna will be there, Amanda and I will understand if our invitation needs to be rescinded. So you would miss your own cousin's wedding because of this ridiculous restraining order, she demanded. I would miss it to avoid creating a scene that would detract from Emma's special day, I clarified. The restraining order exists because they broke into our home and refused to leave when confronted. The conversation ended abruptly when Linda realized I would not be manipulated by family obligation. Emma herself called a few days later expressing regret but understanding when Amanda and I sent our good wishes and a generous gift rather than attending her celebration. Throughout this turbulent period, I discovered the strange peace that came with enforcing clear boundaries. After years of answering every call, responding to every demand, and feeling perpetually inadequate for failing to meet impossible expectations, the silence of blocked numbers felt like a gift. We reclaimed our weekends, no longer structuring them around obligatory family events or emergency requests from Kevin. The gnawing anxiety that had accompanied every family interaction gradually subsided, replaced by the simple pleasure of living according to our own values and priorities. Despite the relief of legal protection, the emotional aftermath proved challenging. For the first week after the restraining orders were granted, I startled at every car door that slammed on our street, half expecting Dad to appear on our doorstep, dismissing the court order as casually as he had dismissed all our previous boundaries. Each night I checked the locks twice before bed, a ritual that offered minimal reassurance against the lingering sense of violation. Amanda noticed my restlessness. "You are not sleeping well," she observed one morning as I stumbled bleary-eyed toward the coffee maker. "Just processing everything," I admitted. "I know we did the right thing, but it still feels strange." "What you are feeling is normal," she said, her nursing background evident in her assessment. "Our home was violated. That creates a sense of vulnerability that takes time to heal." Her unwavering support throughout the ordeal had been my foundation. While friends expressed shock that I would take legal action against family, Amanda never questioned the necessity. She understood viscerally what had been at stake, not just our physical space, but our autonomy as adults. 2 weeks after the court hearing, we began sessions with Dr. Wilson, a therapist specializing in family estrangement and boundary setting. Her office, with its comfortable armchairs and muted lighting, became a safe space to unpack decades of complicated family dynamics. "Your father displays classic controlling behaviors," Dr. Wilson noted during our third session. "He equates love with compliance and views independence as rejection. This pattern likely intensified after your mother's death, when his role as sole parent became central to his identity." These insights helped me contextualize Dad's actions without excusing them. Understanding that his behavior stemmed from his own insecurities and fear of irrelevance didn't make it acceptable, but it did help me process my complicated feelings of anger, guilt, and grief. "I keep questioning if I overreacted," I confessed during one particularly difficult session. "Maybe we could have found a compromise." Dr. Wilson leaned forward slightly. "Trevor, they made a copy of your key without permission and moved furniture into your house while you were at work, after you explicitly refused. This was not a misunderstanding or a case of poor communication. This was a deliberate violation." Hearing it stated so plainly by a neutral third party helped solidify my resolve. We had not been unreasonable in our boundaries or excessive in our response. At home, we took practical steps to reclaim our sense of security. We upgraded to a comprehensive security system with motion sensors and doorbell cameras. The installation technician explained each component thoroughly, the new technology transforming our anxiety into a sense of empowerment. Each alert on our phones confirming that the system was armed became a small reminder that we were protecting what was ours. Beyond the practical measures, Amanda and I worked to emotionally reclaim our space. We repainted the office that had briefly been converted to Brianna's nursery, choosing a calming sage green that felt nothing like the existing walls. We rearranged furniture throughout the house, creating new pathways and sightlines that subtly transformed the familiar space. These physical changes helped disrupt the mental images of violation that had been imprinted on our home. Gradually, I began to recognize how much stress I had been carrying about family expectations. Each holiday birthday or random Tuesday had always included the possibility of a crisis call from Kevin or a guilt trip from Dad. Without the constant background anxiety of anticipating the next family emergency, I slept better. My performance at work improved. I reconnected with friends who had gradually fallen away as family demands consumed more of my time and emotional energy. One evening, as we sat on our back patio, enjoying the spring twilight, Amanda broached a subject we had previously set aside. "I have been thinking about starting a family," she said, her fingers laced through mine. "Before all this happened, I was hesitant because of how your family might impact our children, the lack of boundaries, the constant drama." I squeezed her hand. "And now I see that you can set boundaries that stick, that we can create the family environment we want for our children regardless of the family we came from." Her smile held both vulnerability and hope. "What do you think?" The conversation opened a new chapter for us, one focused on building our future rather than managing the chaos of my past. We began researching school districts, setting up a dedicated savings account for future expenses, and transforming the guest room into a potential nursery at a pace that felt comfortable for both of us. As months passed, I discovered an unexpected community of support. Through an online forum, Dr. Wilson recommended I connected with others navigating family estrangement. Their stories varied widely in detail, but shared common themes of control, violated boundaries, and the difficult decision to prioritize personal well-being over family obligation. Their solidarity helped normalize my experience, contradicting the narrative that proper families forgive all transgressions without condition. The first holiday season without contact from Dad's side of the family arrived with both melancholy and relief. No coordinating schedules around multiple family gatherings. No tense meals where conversations required careful navigation around sensitive topics. No last-minute demands for financial help disguised as Christmas spirit. Instead, we hosted a small gathering of close friends and Amanda's parents who had always respected our boundaries with remarkable consistency. The evening was filled with genuine laughter, relaxed conversations, and the warm glow of relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. "Is it strange that I do not miss the big family Christmas?" I asked Amanda, as we cleaned up after our guests departed. She paused, dish towel in hand. "I think it is normal to miss what you wish those gatherings could have been while being relieved to escape what they actually were." Her insight captured exactly what I had been struggling to articulate. I mourned the loss of the family relationship I had always wanted, not the controlling boundary-violating reality I had escaped. The restraining orders created a structured separation that allowed me to build a life defined by my own values, rather than reactions to family chaos. I strengthened relationships with the few relatives who respected our boundaries. I developed friendships based on mutual interest rather than shared history. Most importantly, I learned to recognize the difference between genuine familial love and the controlling behaviors that had masqueraded as care throughout my childhood. 6 months after the U-Haul incident, I could finally sleep through the night without checking the locks. Our home had become a sanctuary again, not through forgetting what had happened, but by processing it, learning from it, and creating new patterns of safety and respect within our walls. 6 months after the restraining orders were granted, they expired on a Tuesday that passed without incident. I had wondered whether Dad would mark the occasion by immediately showing up on our doorstep, but our security cameras recorded nothing unusual that day. The legal protection had ended, but the boundaries it represented remained firmly in place. Through mutual friends and the inevitable small-town gossip network, we heard that Kevin and Brianna had found an apartment in a neighboring city with Dad's financial assistance. Their daughter, born healthy at 7 pounds 3 ounces, was now 3 months old. Dad had apparently converted his home office into a nursery for his granddaughter's frequent visits, channeling his controlling tendencies into grandparenting, rather than continuing to battle with me. After careful consideration and discussions with Dr. Wilson, Amanda and I decided not to pursue an extension of the restraining orders. However, we maintained our stance of no contact, a boundary reinforced by the newly established patterns of our lives. The spacious distance created by 6 months of legally mandated separation had allowed fresh perspectives to take root. "I feel like I can breathe fully for the first time in my adult life," I told Amanda one evening as we walked our recently adopted rescue dog around the neighborhood. Like I have been carrying this invisible weight that suddenly disappeared. She squeezed my hand. You have spent years managing their emotions and crises. That is exhausting work. The changes in our lives extended beyond the absence of family drama. We had cultivated deeper friendships, become more involved in community activities, and focused on building the life we wanted, rather than constantly responding to external demands. Aunt Julia and Uncle Stuart, who had supported our boundaries from the beginning, became regular dinner guests, bringing their warmth and wisdom without the toxic dynamics that had characterized other family relationships. I maintained limited, carefully structured contact with a few cousins who respected our boundaries while understanding my need for distance from Dad and Kevin. These relationships, freed from the expectation of automatic forgiveness for bad behavior, evolved into something more authentic than before. 4 months after the restraining orders expired, Amanda shared news that transformed our perspective entirely. She was pregnant. After years of putting family planning on hold due to the chaotic family dynamics, we were finally creating our own branch of the family tree. This is why the boundaries were so important, Amanda said, her hands resting protectively over her still flat stomach. Our child deserves to grow up in a home where respect is the foundation, not an occasional visitor. The nursery planning began with joy rather than anxiety. We chose a gentle woodland theme, painting murals of trees and friendly animals on the walls that had once briefly housed Brianna's hastily assembled crib. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming the space for its intended purpose, a room filled with love and intentional choices rather than obligation and resentment. As Amanda's pregnancy progressed, the inevitable question arose. Would we inform Dad about his future grandchild? After several thoughtful discussions and consultations with Dr. Wilson, we decided to send a brief, informative email rather than re-establishing direct contact. We wanted to let you know that Amanda is expecting our first child in November. While our boundaries regarding direct contact remain unchanged, we felt you should be aware of this addition to the family. The response came 3 days later, shorter than I expected from a man who typically used 10 words where 2 would suffice. Congratulations to you both. I hope motherhood brings Amanda joy, and fatherhood teaches you the challenges of parenting. Raymond. The subtle dig in the final sentence confirmed that our boundaries remained necessary. Dad still viewed my actions through the lens of personal affront rather than legitimate self-protection. The email exchange did not evolve into regular communication, and we proceeded with our pregnancy journey surrounded by those who could celebrate with us without conditions. Throughout this period, I reflected deeply on the lessons learned from the U-Haul incident and its aftermath. The most profound realization was that true family support looked nothing like what my father had modeled. Real support respected autonomy, offered help without attachment, and valued the recipient's needs above the giver's control. The distinction between obligation and genuine connection became increasingly clear. The relatives with whom we maintained contact chose relationship over righteousness. They asked questions instead of making demands. They accepted our boundaries as expressions of health rather than rejection. These relationships flourished in the space created by mutual respect, growing deeper as artificial obligations fell away. I also recognized early warning signs I had previously ignored: the subtle dismissals of stated preferences, the jokes that masked control attempts, the emergencies that always seemed to require exactly what had just been refused. These behaviors now stood out like flashing warning lights, enabling me to protect our growing family from similar dynamics in other relationships. As Amanda's due date approached, we established clear visitation policies for the hospital and our home afterward. Amanda's parents, who had always modeled healthy boundaries, readily agreed to our request for 2 weeks of privacy after the birth before welcoming visitors. Friends arranged meal deliveries that could be left on the porch without requiring social interaction. Our boundaries were met not with resistance, but with understanding and support from those who truly valued our well-being. The joy of creating our own family traditions outweighed any lingering sadness about broken connections. We designed holiday celebrations that reflected our values rather than inherited obligations. We built friendships with other young families in our neighborhood, creating a community of chosen connections based on mutual respect and shared life stages. 8 months after the restraining orders expired, our daughter Eliza was born. Her arrival cementing the importance of the boundaries we had fought to establish. Holding her small, perfect form in the hospital, I felt a fierce protectiveness that crystallized every decision we had made. She will grow up knowing that love does not require surrendering your autonomy, I whispered to her sleeping face. That family means respect, not control. Amanda, exhausted but radiant, watched us from her hospital bed. She will understand boundaries because she will see them modeled every day, she added. That is your gift to her even more than this safe home. The U-Haul incident, which had once seemed like the catastrophic breakdown of my family, had actually been the painful but necessary catalyst for building a healthier foundation for my own family. By standing firm against the invasion of our home, we had created the space for something better to grow in its place. Looking back on that Tuesday when I found strangers carrying furniture into my house, I realize now it was the moment I finally chose self-respect over the path of least resistance. The difficult boundary enforcement that followed was not about rejecting family, but about defining what family should truly mean. Support without strings, love without control, and respect as a non-negotiable foundation. Life continues to unfold with the complexity that all families experience. Some days bring challenges, others bring joy, but all are navigated with the knowledge that we define our relationships rather than being defined by them. The peace we fought for was worth every difficult conversation, every legal document, and every severed connection. To those watching who might be struggling with similar family boundary violations, I hope my story offers both validation and courage. Sometimes protecting your peace requires making painful choices. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your future is to stand firm when others attempt to bulldoze your boundaries. And sometimes family is not defined by blood or obligation, but by those who respect who you are and the life you choose to build. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members? What helped you stay strong when others tried to make you feel guilty? Share your experiences in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey from violation to vindication, and remember, your home, your rules, your life, your choices